Today we're ranking every EA Sports NHL game. Now before we get into anything, I just want to say this will be heavily biased. If you're looking for an unbiased opinion on every game, you might as well click off the video. This will all be based off of my personal opinion about the game. So if it's a game that you think is horrible, but I have a nostalgic feel towards it, or if I just like the game, you can't get mad at me. Well, you can, but... Also, you can see this list here does not have NHL 24. It has only up to 23, so I will be just giving my opinions on it at the end. So, the first ever NHL game I played, well, it's not here. I had a PlayStation 2 back in the day. I'm pretty sure I got the game when it came out, but I played NHL 2K9. I believe it had Rick Nash on the cover, and I remember I loved it. I remember there was like a Zamboni mode. It was sick, bro. Like, I'm not saying it's a spectacular game, but I have a lot of nostalgia when it comes to that. The first EA Sports NHL game that I played was NHL 03 with Jerome McGinley on the cover. I do have a bit of nostalgia with this game because obviously I played it in like 2009 or so. It was an old game at that point, and you know, I was only 4 years old. Okay, so how I'm gonna rank these games is gonna be based on the cover art, the soundtrack, my personal nostalgia, overall gameplay, and new features. But for NHL 03 though, I will say the cover art for NHL 03 is amazing. I don't know, there's something about old school games that like you can get away with it being basic. There's something nostalgic about it. One thing that did stick with me though is the soundtrack of the game. It might be one of my favorite soundtracks in EA Sports NHL. You know, they had like No One Knows by Queens of the Stone Age. They had She Loves Me Not by Papa Roach, Sweetness by Jimmy Eat World, Headstrong, just absolute bangers. Deny, oh my god, Pitiful. Those are amazing songs. Like, I grew up on those songs. A lot of people did. I think for that reason alone, it's either got to be good or really good. I don't think it's an S tier game for me personally. I think I'm gonna put it in good. Okay, so NHL 04, 05, 06, 07, I never played it all. Aside from like a few games, you know, if I went to a friend's house and they had it, or NHL 08, you know, I absolutely loved it. Eric Stahl on the cover. It's such a simple cover. I think it's so badass though. The change of graphics, there's a whole new skill stick. It was a big leap from NHL 07. It was a huge leap in animation and everything. You had goalie mode as well introduced, I believe. But the skill stick, I mean, it's on its own, that's an amazing feature because the skill stick kept evolving over time into what it is now. It's such an important part of today's game. Dynasty mode is still cool. I'm a Canucks fan, so I played with the Canucks a lot. I loved the jerseys in that game. I love the overall feel of that game. I don't really have anything bad to say about that game. I just think this is like the start of peak NHL up until like 2014. That's peak NHL games right there. The soundtrack as well was incredible. There's a lot of absolute classics in there. I don't think it's the best soundtrack by any means, but I will say that it adds to the fact that it's a great game. I'm gonna put it above NHL 03 and good, but it's very close. Just know that it's not by a landslide. Okay, NHL 09. This gets interesting because I have a lot of nostalgia with this game. A lot of nostalgia. More than these two games. Obviously Dion Phaneuf on the cover. I think that this is once again like a very simple cover. You know, it's nothing crazy. There's no spectacular thing about it, but it's simple and it looks good and it draws your attention. This was the first game with EA SHL in it. I didn't play EA SHL until about NHL 18, I want to say. So I can't necessarily speak on that aspect, but I will say that that is a huge thing. And this was a time where I was really getting into hockey. I thought this game was incredible. The soundtrack is amazing. There's like almost no misses. Actually, there is no misses. I think this might be like a top 3 for sure. You could just sit there on the menu and make a day out of it type shit. So I think for that reason, I'm gonna put it in really good. It is very close to S tier. I don't know. It's very high and really good. Okay, so next up is NHL 10. This game had a lot of new things to it. This game had battle on the board, so you could actually board play people. After the whistle, you were able to do things like at the period ending, you were able to go hit people, take shots on net. There was first person fighting camera angle. I think it is really cool, but it's not exactly my favorite. But at the time, it was amazing. There was a lot of new animations in this game. The goalies were improved. More importantly, they added GM mode. The Be a Pro was very simple, but you know, it's enjoyable. Battle for the Cup mode. They had so many rosters and so many leagues overseas, you know. I think this is by far the most nostalgic game for me. I've spent so long playing this game. That's the reason why I didn't get NHL 11. Like, I was playing NHL 10. I didn't want to play a different game. I think this is probably my favorite soundtrack too. You just have banger after banger after banger after banger. I think, you know what? I think this is an S tier game. The cover is incredible with Patty Kane. I think it was a whole new design of the cover as well. I think this is by far my favorite. NHL 11, obviously I never played. unfortunately. I wish I did. But NHL 12, I did play a little bit. I have probably, out of the games that I have played, this is probably the game I have the least amount of hours into, but I know how good of a game it was. I know this game has a very good legacy. I think it's a great cover. I think it's an amazing soundtrack. I think the gameplay was good from what I remember of it. Obviously, I didn't play as much of this game as a lot of people did. I think I'm gonna put it in good, but above NHL 08. Oh, but I don't know. No, I can't do that. I can't do that to NHL 08 because NHL 08 is like, matter of fact, I think I might have to put NHL 08 in really good, but behind NHL 09. And I think I'm happy with this ranking so far. So NHL 12 on good. NHL 13, I have so many hours on this game. This game is very nostalgic for me. I remember coming home from school with my brother. We used to hop on NHL 13 and play it for hours, especially during the summer of 2013. Me and him spent hours every single day playing it, and we never got bored. And that's the thing, it was really weird because we never had online. We never had Xbox Live because my dad wouldn't allow us to, but we never got bored. That's something I feel about all of these games right here. I didn't have online, so I didn't even get to experience the full game, and I still think so highly of them. I never got bored. I would just sit there and create the most broken teams, have, you know, 85 overalls rocking my fourth line. I would win every game by 13, and I would never ever get bored. I know that they created GM Connected, which is something that me, along with, you know, hundreds of thousands of people want and are begging for in NHL 25, but, you know, it never came. Maybe in 26, right? We'll be saying that until we're old and gray. Regardless, it was in NHL 13 and NHL 14, but it sucks that I missed out on that when I was younger, because that would have been something that I would have loved doing. I love the cover, Claude Giroux on the cover. They obviously had the new skating. I don't remember, it was like performance skating or something like that. That was something that blew my mind when I was younger, because obviously it was, these games, it wasn't really realistic skating. It was realistic, but like there wasn't freedom of movement. It was always just an animation, and you had like a force field around your player. But in NHL 13, it seemed like your player was more realistic when he skated. The hitting in that game was like absolute comedy. There was a lot of glitches with the hits, which I thought was pretty cool. Like I mean, I'm sure it was annoying in the online modes. There was a lot of AI changes in this game, and I think it was a really good game. The soundtrack was incredible. Obviously, you had like The Offspring, you had Classified, you had Shinedown, just really, really good songs on there. One of those games where you could just sit on the menu. I'm comfortable putting it above NHL 08, but below NHL 09. NHL 14, a lot of people think this is the best NHL game of all time, and they're definitely not wrong to think that. They had GM Connected in here. EA SHL was really improved in NHL 13, but in NHL 14 it was amazing too. I never played EA SHL back then, like I've said, but from watching, you know, 2BC Productions, all those guys, NHL 14 is low-key peak hockey right there. Having Marty Brodeur on the cover, I think that's amazing. They did change Be a Pro to Live the Life, which I thought was pretty cool. I mean, you got to interact with your like coaches, there was interviews and stuff. You could keep track of your like relationship with teammates, coaches, and the fans. Obviously, I thought that was really cool. There was the Winter Classic mode, which, I mean, that's amazing. They had that in NHL 13, I believe, as well. I could be wrong about that though. There was the NBC matchup thing, so you'd have that really cool intro. Man, this game was really good now that I'm thinking about it, and the soundtrack of it was one of the best soundtracks I have ever heard. Like top to bottom, there's no misses. It's very similar to NHL 10. I think a lot of people love this game, and I'm one of those people, to be honest. I think I'm gonna put it in S tier. It's gonna be under NHL 10 for me, strictly because of nostalgia, but I do have a lot of nostalgia with this game. A lot. And as high of a high as NHL 14 was, this is where it all came crashing down. They couldn't build off of it. They took out modes. They gave up on the franchise. I mean, you had NHL 15 on the 360 and PS3. That was basically just a copy paste of NHL 14, which is, I think, what it was designed to be, because, you know, obviously the Xbox One and PS4 were getting games and all that stuff. So it wasn't designed to be a big thing because they were putting all their budget into NHL 15 for the next gen consoles. It didn't turn out good at all. The modes were horrible in next gen, or at least the modes that were there. They took out EA SHL for the next gen. It was just a disaster of a game, to be honest with you. It was better to just save your money and buy the game for the 360 or PS3. It was not worth it buying the next gen version. I mean, the graphics were amazing. I love the new scoreboard. I love the jerseys. The animations were fine. There was a lot of bugs though with the menus and all that stuff. The soundtrack wasn't horrible. Quite a few steps below NHL 14 and the rest of the games, to be honest. But the soundtrack being the best part of the game, I think will put it into, I think it is the worst NHL game. I definitely don't despise it, but I'm never gonna play it again. Now we have the Legacy Edition. I guess they don't have NHL 16 on here. I didn't play NHL 16. I played the Legacy Edition because I had the 360 still. I got an Xbox One in NHL 17, so I still played the 360 version of 16, which was Legacy Edition. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, it was basically a copy paste from the last couple games. Updated rosters, obviously. I didn't have a problem with the soundtrack at all. I thought it was pretty solid. It's not in the same realm as NHL 3 or NHL 12. For that, I'm going to put it in meh. Like, it wasn't a great game. From what I've played of Legacy Edition, I think it was meh. It was better than NHL 15, but it was nowhere near NHL 14. Now we get into NHL 17 though. This is like a continuation of the fall off, but NHL 17 wasn't that bad in my opinion. Like, I know the AIs were horrendous. For me personally though, I like the soundtrack. They had a couple misses. We're far past the S tier soundtracks. It wasn't anything special. NHL 17, it's a good game. It wasn't a bad game at all. HUT was cool. Be a Pro was decent. You know, it was the same thing as it always was. It was nothing crazy. Graphics were really good. It was a step in the right direction from 16. For the cover as well, Tarasenko on the cover. I think it was a really good cover. NHL 16 wasn't a bad cover, but Legacy Edition, it was kind of boring. But I mean, like, they weren't going to put much effort into it, really, considering, you know, at that point, they're 2 years into the next-gen console. So I think Patrice Bergeron on the cover was pretty solid. It was, you know, that and the soundtrack was the only good part about 15. I really did like the cover of NHL 18 with Connor McDavid. Now, I know in NHL 18, the deking was upgraded. I know there was a lot of gameplay updates. There was like a mascot mode or something like that. There was something you could do with mascots that I thought was pretty cool at the time. There was a new defensive skill stick as well, which was a nice step in the right direction. Hockey Ultimate Team was pretty solid back then. I think they had draft champions in 17. I'm not sure if they had draft champs in 18. I can't really remember. As far as nostalgia, I have almost no nostalgia for this game. I would forget about it if I wasn't looking at this. It wasn't my favorite game by any means. There's not much replay. Actually, there's no replay value towards it. The soundtrack wasn't horrendous. It was nowhere near. It's not good. It's not good at all. There's a couple bangers like Air is Free. I think that's a really solid song. There's, you know, Amsterdam. If you haven't listened to Amsterdam on that soundtrack, you gotta go listen to it. That song is an absolute banger. I don't want to disrespect it too much. I'm putting it above a Legacy Edition, but I can't put it in good. It's just not there for me. But now we go to NHL 19, and I gotta say, this game was pretty dog shit. I didn't like anything about it, really. I know they had World of Chell, and they had, like, ones in it. I think that's a cool addition, but me, like, I didn't really play this game as much. Was not a big fan of it. The soundtrack was not good, in my opinion. I think it was a massive fall off. I have very mixed opinions on it. I think the cover is ugly. PK Subban as a cover athlete was pretty sick. I just don't like the color of it at all. I don't like the orange. I wish they would have put PK Subban on the cover years before that, when they actually put decent effort into the cover. Now, NHL 20 with Austin Matthews on the cover. I think the cover's pretty cool. Nothing crazy though. Like, absolutely nothing crazy. Like, it was better than 19, not better than 18. This game was pretty horrible. It was not a fun experience for me to play at all. The soundtrack was cheeks. I think I'm gonna put this in. This is our first one in terrible, and I think I'm pretty confident in saying that too. As you can tell, I'm not a big fan of the newer NHL games. NHL 21 is very similar to NHL 20. I mean, I feel like I had a better time playing this game. I feel like it was more fun than NHL 20, but it was not a good game by any means. I think at best, I'll put it at low meh. Yeah, I think that's the best I could do. Now we got NHL 22. The cover is boring. The soundtrack was cheeks. They also introduced X Factors, which is a huge part of today's game. I got mixed emotions about them because I feel that they give goalies a complete disadvantage, because if a goalie doesn't have an X Factor, but a player does, they're immediately at a disadvantage. And the same thing for players too. Like, if the goalies had an X Factor, but the players didn't, it was harder for players to score, which I think is, I mean, it was the point of it. But I also feel like it's kind of the similar thing with like a badge in NBA 2K. Like, just because a player doesn't have the badge does not mean they should be horrible at it. And just because they have the badge does not mean that should be broken. Like, it should not break the game how overpowered it is. For example, I think like close quarters, absolutely broken. Like, if you're a goalie, which I played a goalie a lot in World of Chell, if somebody has close quarters, it's 50-50 whether or not you save it. I mean, you could be lined up and they'll still find a way to get it in. Maybe pause. But still, you know what I mean though. And I believe it was NHL 20, the Be a Pro started being horrible. Nothing's changed. I mean, we've had the same Be a Pro for 5 years. This game is terrible. And 23, I mean, the cover somehow got worse. I didn't think it could get worse, but it did. Gameplay, I mean, it was better, I believe, than NHL 22 and 20. The soundtrack, horrible. I mean, I shot it off in the first 2 weeks of the game. It was pretty horrendous. There's like, I mean, a couple okay songs. No nostalgia whatsoever. I won't be playing these games anytime soon, ever again. Yeah, it is meh at best. Not a great game at all. NHL 24, I think I'd put in meh as well, but I think I'd put it above NHL 23. And NHL 25, I mean, the Be a Pro is not great. From NHL 22 to 25, it's basically just a roster update. Like, there's a couple new features here and there, but it's nothing to write home about. They're not listening to what the community wants. Matter of fact, you know, I think I'm gonna change 23. It's better than NHL 20, but it's not good. It's not meh. It's not nothing. It's not the worst, but it's not meh. It's just ass, okay? And then 25 so far is meh. It's a bad game, but it's not a horrible game. I think that's a decent way to put it. If you do agree with my opinion, which you might not, who knows, then let me know what you think in the comments section, because this is, you know, kind of a controversial topic in the sense that a lot of people have opinions on these games. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We just hit 1K. I appreciate all of you guys for that. We're almost at 1.1K as of recording this, but yeah, so feel free to check out my channel, and I'll see you on the next one.